Her Majesty's Most Honourable Privy Council, usually known simply as the Privy Council, is a formal body of advisors to the Sovereign of the United Kingdom. Its membership mainly comprises senior politicians, who represent former members of either the House of Commons or the House of Lords. The Privy Council formally advises the Sovereign on the exercise of the royal prerogative, and corporately it issues executive instruments known as orders in council, which among other powers enact acts of Parliament. The Council also holds the delegated authority to issue orders of council, mostly used to regulate certain public institutions. The Council advises the Sovereign on the issuing of royal charters, which are used to grant special status to incorporated bodies, and city or borough status to local authorities. Otherwise, the Privy Council's powers have now been largely replaced by the Cabinet of the United Kingdom. Certain judicial functions are also performed by the Queen in Council, although in practice its actual work of hearing and deciding upon cases is carried out day to day by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. The Judicial Committee consists of senior judges appointed as Privy Councillors, predominantly justices of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom and senior judges from the Commonwealth. The Privy Council formerly acted as the High Court of Appeal for the entire British Empire, and continues to hear appeals from the Crown dependencies, the British Overseas Territories, and some independent Commonwealth states. History. The Privy Council of the United Kingdom was preceded by the Privy Council of Scotland and the Privy Council of England. The key events in the formation of the modern Privy Council are given below. White Age, what was an early equivalent to the Privy Council of England. During the reigns of the Norman monarchs, the English crown was advised by a royal court curia regis, which consisted of magnates, ecclesiastics and high officials. The body originally concerned itself with advising the sovereign on legislation, administration and justice. Later, different bodies assuming distinct functions evolved from the court. The courts of law took over the business of dispensing justice, while Parliament became the supreme legislature of the kingdom. Nevertheless, the Council retained the power to hear legal disputes, either in the first instance or on appeal. Furthermore, laws made by the sovereign on the advice of the Council, rather than on the advice of Parliament, were accepted as valid. Powerful sovereigns often used the body to circumvent the courts and Parliament. For example, a committee of the Council, which later became the Court of the Star Chamber, was during the 15th century permitted to inflict any punishment except death, without being bound by normal court procedure. During Henry VIII's reign, the sovereign, on the advice of the Council, was allowed to enact laws by mere proclamation. The legislative preeminence of Parliament was not restored until after Henry VIII's death. Though the Royal Council retained legislative and judicial responsibilities, it became a primarily administrative body. The Council consisted of 40 members in 1553, but the sovereign relied on a smaller committee, which later evolved into the modern cabinet. By the end of the English Civil War, the monarchy, House of Lords, and Privy Council had been abolished. The remaining parliamentary chamber, the House of Commons, instituted a Council of State to execute laws and to direct administrative policy. The 41 members of the Council were elected by the House of Commons. The body was headed by Oliver Cromwell, de facto military dictator of the nation. In 1653, however, Cromwell became Lord Protector, and the Council was reduced to between 13 and 21 members, all elected by the Commons. In 1657, the Commons granted Cromwell even greater powers, some of which were reminiscent of those enjoyed by monarchs. The council became known as the Protector's Privy Council. Its members were appointed by the Lord Protector, subject to Parliament's approval. In 1659, shortly before the restoration of the monarchy, the Protector's Council was abolished. Charles II restored the royal Privy Council, but he, like previous Stuart monarchs, chose to rely on a small group of advisers. Under George I, even more power transferred to this committee. It now began to meet in the absence of the sovereign, communicating its decisions to him after the fact. Thus, the British Privy Council, as a whole, ceased to be a body of important confidential advisers to the sovereign. The role passed to a committee of the council, now known as the Cabinet. Origin of the term. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the definition of the word privy in Privy Council is obsolete, meaning of appertaining exclusively to a particular person or persons, one's own. Hence the council is personal to the sovereign. It is closely related to the word private, and derives from the French word privé, composition. The sovereign, when acting on the council's advice, is known as the king in council or queen in council. The members of the council are collectively known as the Lords of Her Majesty's Most Honourable Privy Council. The chief officer of the body is the Lord President of the Council, who is the fourth highest grade officer of state. A cabinet member are normally either the leader of the House of Lords or of the House of Commons. Another important official is the clerk, whose signature is appended to all orders made in the council. Both Privy Councillor and Privy Councillor may be correctly used to refer to a member of the council. The former, however, is preferred by the Privy Council Office, emphasizing English usage of the term counsellor as one who gives counsel, as opposed to one who is a member of a council. A Privy Councillor is traditionally said to be sworn of the council after being received by the sovereign. The sovereign may appoint anyone a Privy Councillor, but in practice appointments are made only on the advice of Her Majesty's government, and generally consist only of senior members of Parliament, the Church of England and judiciary. There is no statutory limit to its membership. At January 2012, there were about 600 members. They had risen in number to over 650 by June 2015. However, the members have no automatic right to attend all Privy Council meetings, and only some are summoned regularly to meetings. The Church of England's three senior bishops, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of York and the Bishop of London, become Privy Councillors upon appointment. Senior members of the royal family may also be appointed, but this is confined to the current consort and heir apparent and consort. Prince Philip is at present the most senior member by length of service, and he is the only current Privy Councillor not appointed by the reigning monarch, having been sworn of the council by her father. The private secretary to the sovereign is always appointed a Privy Councillor, as of the Lord Chamberlain, the Speaker of the House of Commons, and the Lord Speaker. Justices of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, judges of the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, senior judges of the Inner House of the Court of Session and the Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland also join the Privy Council ex officio. The balance of Privy Councillors is largely made up of politicians. The Prime Minister, Cabinet Ministers and the Leader of opposition are traditionally sworn of the Privy Council upon appointment. Leaders of major parties in the House of Commons, First Ministers of the devolved assemblies, some senior ministers outside Cabinet, and on occasion other respected senior parliamentarians are appointed Privy Councillors, because Privy Councillors are bound by oath to keep matters discussed at council meetings secret. The appointment of the leaders of opposition parties as Privy Councillors allows the government to share confidential information with them on Privy Council terms. This usually only happens in special circumstances, such as in matters of national security. For example, Tony Blair met Ian Duncan Smith and Charles Kennedy, on Privy Council terms, to discuss the evidence for Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. Although the Privy Council is primarily a British institution, officials from some other Commonwealth realms are also appointed. By 2000, 2000. The most notable instance was New Zealand, whose Prime Minister, senior politicians, Chief Justice and Court of Appeal justices were traditionally appointed Privy Councillors. However, appointments of New Zealand members have since been discontinued. The Prime Minister, the Speaker, the Governor-General and the Chief Justice of New Zealand are still accorded the style Right Honourable, but without membership of the Council. Until the late 20th century, the Prime Ministers and Chief Justices of Canada and Australia were also appointed Privy Councillors. Canada also has its own Privy Council, the Queen's Privy Council for Canada. Prime Ministers of some other Commonwealth countries that retain the Queen as the sovereign continue to be sworn of the Council. Privy Council oath and initiation rite. It was formerly regarded by the Privy Council as criminal and possibly treasonous to disclose the oath administered to Privy Councillors as they take office. However, the oath was officially made public by the Blair government in a written parliamentary answer in 1998 as follows. It had also been read out in full in the House of Lords during debate by Lord Ranelagh on the 21st of December 1932. You do swear by Almighty God to be a true and faithful servant unto the Queen's Majesty, as one of Her Majesty's Privy Council. You will not know or understand of any manner of thing to be attempted, done, or spoken against Her Majesty's person, honour, crown, or dignity royal, but you will let and withstand the same to the utmost of your power, and either cause it to be revealed to Her Majesty herself, or to such of her Privy Council as shall advertise Her Majesty of the same. You will, in all things to be moved, treated, and debated in council, faithfully and truly declare your mind and opinion, according to your heart and conscience, and will keep secret all matters committed and revealed unto you, or that shall be treated of secretly in council. And if any of the said treaties or councils shall touch any of the councillors, you'll not reveal it unto him, but will keep the same until such time as, by the consent of Her Majesty, or of the Council, publication shall be made thereof. You will to your uttermost bear faith and allegiance unto the Queen's Majesty, and will assist and defend all jurisdictions, preeminences, and authorities granted to Her Majesty, and annexed to the Crown by Acts of Parliament, or otherwise, against all foreign princes, persons, prelates, states, or potentates. And generally in all things you will do as a faithful and true servant ought to do to Her Majesty. So help you God. A form of this oath dates back to at least 1570. Privy Councillors can choose to affirm their allegiance in similar terms should they prefer not to take a religious oath. At the Induction Ceremony, the order of precedence places Anglicans before others. The initiation ceremony for newly appointed Privy Councillors is held in private and typically requires kneeling on a stool before the sovereign and then kissing hands. According to the Royal Encyclopedia, the new Privy Councillor or Minister will extend his or her right hand, palm upwards, and, taking the Queen's hand lightly, will kiss it with no more than a touch of the lips. The ceremony has caused difficulties for Privy Councillors who advocate republicanism. Tony Benn said in his diaries that he kissed his own thumb, rather than the Queen's hand, while Jeremy Corbyn reportedly did not kneel. Not all members of the Privy Council go through the initiation ceremony. Appointments are frequently made by an order in council, although it is rare for a party leader to use such a course. Term of office. Membership is conferred for life. Formerly, the death of a monarch brought an immediate dissolution of the council, as all crown appointments automatically lapsed. By the 18th century, it was enacted that the council would not be dissolved until up to 6 months after the demise of the crown. By convention, however, the sovereign would reappoint all members of the council after its dissolution. In practice, therefore, membership continued without a break. In 1901 the law was changed to ensure that Crown appointments became wholly unaffected by any succession of monarchs. The sovereign, however, may remove an individual from the Privy Council. On 8 June 2011, the former MP Elliot Morley was expelled following his conviction on charges of false accounting in connection with the British parliamentary expenses scandal. Before this, the last individual to be expelled from the council against his will was Sir Edgar Spire-BT, who was removed on 13 December 1921 for collaborating with the enemy German Empire during the First World War. Individuals can choose to resign, sometimes to avoid expulsion. 3 members voluntarily left the Privy Council in the 20th century. Jonathan Aitken, on 25 June 1997 following allegations of perjury. John Profumo, who resigned on 26 June 1963, and John Stonehouse, who resigned on 17 August 1976. On 4 February 2013, Chris Huhne announced that he would voluntarily leave the Privy Council after pleading guilty to perverting the course of justice. The Lord Prescott stood down on 6 July 2013 as an act of protest against the delays in the introduction of press regulation, expecting others to follow, and Dennis McShane was forced to resign on 9 October 2013 prior to a High Court hearing at which he pleaded guilty of false accounting and was subsequently imprisoned. Both the former Labour MPs. Meetings of the Privy Council are normally held once each month wherever the sovereign may be in residence at the time. The quorum, according to the Privy Council office, is 3, though some statutes provide for other quorums provides for a lower quorum of 2. The sovereign attends the meeting, though his or her place may be taken by 2 or more councillors of state. Under the Regency Acts Chapter 1937 to 1953, councillors of state may be chosen from among the sovereign spouse and the 4 individuals next in the line of succession who are over 21 years of age. Customarily, the sovereign remains standing at meetings of the Privy Council, so that no other members may sit down, thereby keeping meetings short. The Lord President reads out a list of orders to be made, and the sovereign merely says approved. Few Privy Councillors are required to attend regularly. The settled practice is that day-to-day meetings of the Council are attended by 4 Privy Councillors, usually the relevant minister to the matters pertaining. The Cabinet Minister holding the office of Lord President of the Council, currently the RT Hon David Lidington MP, invariably presides. Under Britain's modern conventions of parliamentary government and constitutional monarchy, every order made in council is drafted by a government department and has already been approved by the minister responsible, thus actions taken by the Queen in council are formalities required for validation of each measure. Full meetings of the Privy Council are held only when the reigning sovereign announces his or her own engagement, or when there is a demise of the Crown, either by the death or abdication of the monarch. A full meeting of the Privy Council was also held on 6 February 1811, when George, Prince of Wales, was sworn in as Prince Regent by Act of Parliament. The current statutes regulating the establishment of a regency in the case of minority or incapacity of the sovereign also require any regents to swear their oaths before the Privy Council. In the case of a demise of the Crown, the Privy Council, together with the Lords Spiritual, the Lords Temporal, the Lord Mayor and Aldermen of the City of London, as well as representatives of Commonwealth Realms, makes a proclamation declaring the accession of the new sovereign and receives an oath from the new monarch relating to the security of the Church of Scotland, as required by law. It is also customary for the new sovereign to make an allocution to the Privy Council on that occasion, and this sovereign's speeches formally published in the London Gazette. Any such special assembly of the Privy Council, convened to proclaim the accession of a new sovereign and witness the monarch's statutory oath, is known as an Accession Council. The last such meetings were held on 6 and 8 February 1952, as Elizabeth II was abroad when the last demise of the Crown took place. The Accession Council met twice, once to proclaim the sovereign, and then again after the new Queen had returned to Britain, to receive from her the oath required by statute. Functions: the sovereign exercises executive authority by making orders in council upon the advice of the Privy Council. Orders in council, which are drafted by the government rather than by the sovereign, are secondary legislation and are used to make government regulations and to make government appointments. Furthermore, orders in council are used to grant royal assent for measures of the National Assembly for Wales, and laws passed by the legislatures of British Crown dependencies. Distinct from orders in council are orders of council. The former are issued by the sovereign upon the advice of the Privy Council, whereas the latter are made by members of the Privy Council without requiring the sovereign's approval. They are issued under the specific authority of Acts of Parliament, and most commonly are used for the regulation of public institutions. The sovereign also grants royal charters on the advice of the Privy Council. Charters bestow special status to incorporated bodies. They are used to grant chartered status to certain professional, educational or charitable bodies, and sometimes also city and borough status to towns. The Privy Council therefore deals with a wide range of matters, including university and livery company statutes, churchyards, coinage and dates of bank holidays. Members of the Privy Council are privileged to be given advance notice of any prime ministerial decision to commit armed forces in enemy action. Committees. The Privy Council comprises a number of standing committees: Baronetage Committee, Cabinet of the United Kingdom, Committee for the Affairs of Jersey and Guernsey, Committee for the Purposes of the Crown Office Act 1877, Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, Scottish Universities Committee, Universities Committee. The Baronetage Committee was established by a 1910 order in council, during Edward VII's reign, to scrutinise all succession claims to be placed on the roll of baronets. The Committee for the Affairs of Jersey and Guernsey recommends approval of Channel Islands legislation. The Committee for the Purposes of the Crown Office Act 1877 consists of the Lord Chancellor and Lord Privy Seal as well as a Secretary of State. The committee, which last met in 1988, is concerned with the design and usage of wafer seals. The Scottish Universities Committee considers proposed amendments to the statutes of Scotland's four ancient universities. The Universities Committee, which last met in 1995, considers petitions against statutes made by Oxford and Cambridge universities and their colleges. The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council consists of senior judges who are Privy Councillors. The decision of the committee is presented in the form of advice to the monarch, but in practice it is always followed by the sovereign, who formally approved the recommendation of the Judicial Committee. Within the United Kingdom, the Judicial Committee hears appeals from ecclesiastical courts, the Court of Admiralty of the Cinque Ports, Prize Courts, and the Disciplinary Committee of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. Appeals against schemes of the Church Commissioners and appeals under certain Acts of Parliament. The Crown in Council was formerly the Supreme Appeal Court for the entire British Empire, but a number of Commonwealth countries have now abolished the right to such appeals. The Judicial Committee continues to hear appeals from several Commonwealth countries, from British overseas territories, sovereign base areas and Crown dependencies. The Judicial Committee had direct jurisdiction in cases relating to the Scotland Act 1998, the Government of Wales Act 1998 and the Northern Ireland Act 1998. 1998, but this was transferred to the new Supreme Court of the United Kingdom in 2009. In addition to the standing committees, ad hoc committees are notionally set up to consider and report on petitions for royal charters of incorporation and to approve changes to the bylaws of bodies created by royal charter. Committees of Privy Councillors are occasionally established to examine specific issues. Such committees are independent of the Privy Council office and therefore do not report directly to the Lord President of the Council. Examples of such committees include the Butler Committee, operation of the intelligence services in the run-up to military intervention in Iraq; the Chilcot Committee, for the Chilcot Inquiry on the use of intercept materials; the Gibson Committee of Inquiry set up in 2010 to consider whether the UK security services were complicit in torture of detainees. Notable orders. The civil service is formally governed by Privy Council orders, as an exercise of the royal prerogative. One such order implemented HM government's ban of GCHQ staff from joining a trade union. Another, the Civil Service Order in Council 1997, permitted the Prime Minister to grant up to 3 political advisers management authority over some civil servants. In the 1960s, the Privy Council made an order to evict the 2,000 inhabitants of the 65-island Chagos archipelago in the Indian Ocean, in preparation for the establishment of a joint United States-United Kingdom military base on the largest outlying island, Diego Garcia, some 60 miles distant. In 2000, the Court of Appeal ruled the 1971 immigration ordinance preventing resettlement unlawful. In 2004, the Privy Council, under Jack Straw's tenure, overturned the ruling. In 2006, the High Court of Justice found the Privy Council's decision to be unlawful. Sir Sidney Kentridge described the treatment of the Chagosians as outrageous, unlawful and a breach of accepted moral standards. Justice Kentridge stated that there was no known precedent for the lawful use of prerogative powers to remove or exclude an entire population of British subjects from the homes and place of birth, and the Court of Appeal were persuaded by this argument. But the Law Lords found its decision to be flawed and overturned the ruling by a 3-2 decision, thereby upholding the terms of the ordinance.